I just wanted to talk to you this time about the potato cleanse, which is going around. It's pretty hot right now. High Carb Hannah started this. It basically consists of regular potatoes, sweet potatoes, and non-starchy veggies, with some condiments. And I wanted to just get your take on what you think of that type of a cleanse approach, like a restrictive diet, short term.
Yeah, well, I never was a proponent of cleanses. I think the way you cleanse the body is to just put good food in it, and then the bad stuff just kind of naturally comes out. The things that you mentioned are good foods, so I wouldn't call it a cleanse. I would call it, a reasonable diet for somebody to live on for a variety of reasons. They don't have to be that restrictive, but say somebody's challenged by making a lot of different types of foods and they want to keep their diet simple. That would be a very simple diet. They're going to lose a lot of weight and lose a lot of weight fast. If they want to see what weight they will attain, if they look at my November 2015 newsletter, you'll see a weight chart that was originally devised by Walter Kempner from Duke University, where he used something called the rice diet. You want to talk about a step more to extreme. It's a diet that I use occasionally on very sick people. The rice diet is a diet of white rice. He used white rice because he felt it was more palatable and convenient. Brown rice will work just as well. Fruit juice, and table sugar. And at extreme occasions when people with very, very serious kidney disease and heart failure, he would have to make the diet as much as half white sugar. And the reason is because he needed to cut the protein content of the white rice down further so it wouldn't burden the body. So you want to talk about a restrictive diet. I'm sorry, Hannah, what is her name?
High Carb Hannah?
High Carb Hannah. She's moderate, in my view, of taking care of patients. People can live on white potatoes and water and a little dirty stuff in terms of getting B12 alone. After all, there was just a national best-selling, I don't know whether it was Oscar-nominated, movie called The Martian with Matt Damon. And he lived for a year on potatoes only, white potatoes only for a year. And the author of the book, The Martian, is a very smart guy. If you read the book, the technical stuff that's talked about that in there is phenomenal. This is not a stupid man. When he decided that the Martian was going to live on Mars, Matt Damon, for a year, he, I'm sure, researched carefully to understand that people can and have lived on white potatoes alone as a sole source of nutrients. In Poland and Russia and rural parts of these countries at the turn of the 19th century, that's all they had. Experiments have been done on people like Mikhail Hinhidi, who's the man who saved Denmark during World War I. You'll find all this on my website. He did experiments in the late 1800s where he put people on an all-potato diet. A guy named Matson is actually highlighted in my newsletter if you look it up under Hinhidi, Mikhail Hinhidi, or you could look it up under Denmark, or a guy named Matson. He was on a all-potato diet for a year and a half. There was also, and this is reported in the documented scientific literature, there's also a classic study that was published in Journal of Biochemistry in 1928, and that was of a man and a woman. She was 26, he was 25. They were athletes, and they were housed in a metabolic ward situation, and they were fed a diet of essentially all white potatoes, and they did not tire of the diet. And when they checked them for their nutritional health, they found them in excellent health at the end of 6 months. So this is an experiment that's been done on tens of millions of people in natural circumstances. The people of the Andes survived because of papa seca or chuño, which are freeze-dried potatoes. When times were tough, that's all they had to eat. And they would take potatoes, and because they were in the Andes, at night they would freeze, and then they would mash them in the morning when they thawed out and let them dry in the sun. And they would store these freeze-dried potatoes. We're talking about something that happened thousands of years ago and hundreds of years ago also, and still they're making them in Peru and other countries in the Andes. But they would freeze-dry these potatoes, put them in a dry place, and they would last these villages and populations for 10 years. So you're talking about observations of tens of millions of people. And you're talking about a variety of experiments. I want you to know that the World Health Organization named the potato the food of the year in 2008. And they did that because of the world security that the potato may provide. The potato has been a food that has kept civilizations alive in the past, and the World Health Organization felt strongly and positively about the potato, that the year 2008 is the year of the potato. And again, they did that because of the nutritional value of potatoes, because of the ease of growth of potatoes. You can grow them at almost any altitude. They grow on very little water. They're highly productive in terms of the amount of food produced. They actually produce 4 times more food than does wheat. And of course, you're looking, other starches produce 17 to 100 times more calories than does beef. So you're looking at a highly efficient food. And the world is a tough place now, and it could get worse soon. And many people look at the potato as the probable salvation, just like the Martian, just like Matt Damien, the probable salvation for the human race. So when people vilify the potato, I can easily come to the potato's defense, and other people should too. It's an amazing food, and recommending it as a cleanse, I don't know about putting it in that context. I would put the potato in the context of the basis for your diet. I generally recommend people eat 90% of their diet as starch. That means rice, like the people in China did before 1980. 90% of their diet came from rice. It was even white rice. And you look at other civilizations, the Mayans and the Aztecs, 90% of their food intake came from corn. And the Incas, 90% of their food intake came from potatoes. Excuse me. So a potato is a fine starch, an excellent starch. In fact, it's such an excellent starch that you don't have to add any other vitamins or minerals to it. If you were going to pick a grain or a legume as the starch, you'd have to add vitamin A and C. They're both deficient in A and C, and so you could add a slice of orange or a flowerette of broccoli to your corn, wheat, rye, barley, legume-based diet. And that would be complete. The nice thing about potatoes and sweet potatoes and other underground storage organs, underground, that's where they store the food, the carbohydrate, is that they also are abundant in vitamin A and C. So you can live solely, as I've given you many examples, starting from the Martian to the Incas. I mean, look, they're real people. The experience with the potato is worldwide historical. I want to show you. I got brought it out just for you. I've got 3 books on potatoes. Okay, this one's called 1493. You can buy it on Amazon. And I got a book called Potato. Okay, it's all about potatoes. There you go. Go read it. Go read it. Another book on potatoes. And they show the miracle of what potatoes have done throughout history. And this is called the potato. So you can find any 3 of these books to read about the history of the potato and what it's done. Introduction of the potato in England and Wales in the 1800s, doubled the population in about 40 years because of the abundance of nutrition. Introduction of the potato in Ireland. It was Ireland about 80 years before. It doubled the population of the Irish in less than 50 years. The potato, when it was brought over to Europe in the 1600s, it took until the 1700s to become popular. The potato ended malnutrition in Europe. You should be doing nothing. You should get down on your hands and knees and praise the potato. And anybody who says otherwise is doing a disservice to the public. So if you want to make the potato the center of your diet, you can do an all-potato diet. In fact, we wrote about one called the mini diet, Mary's Mini. Mary's Minute. And we distinguished that from our eating program. And the fact that this would be a way to simply eat a starch-based diet and nutritionally, and to get you over some humps and get you started. And we called it a diet because it wasn't something we expected to live on only, but it was basically a starch and a few green and yellow vegetables. So we've been recommending this kind of eating for a long, long, long time. And I'm glad there's a controversy about the potato and about eating high carbohydrate diets, because you must get the subject under the spotlight. The problem has been the kind of eating that almost everybody that ever lived on planet Earth has done, which is starch-based eating. It has been ignored. People haven't looked at the facts. The fact that all large populations of civilized people through all of recordable history have lived on starch. That's been their basic diet. Now, with the introduction of the meat, dairy, and egg industries, all that kind of truth has been suppressed. And they have brought out concerns to the public since the early 1900s. But particularly by 1960. They brought out concerns to the public, so the public fears nutritional deficiencies of nutrients that are particularly high in their products. It's called unique positioning. Unique positioning is when a company takes something unique about their product and advertises to the public. Now let's start with the automobiles. Back in the days when gasoline cost a lot of money. I know that's not the case now, but cars that could get 58 miles to a gallon were advertised as being able to do such. But they didn't advertise the fact that these cars, which were built very lightly, were likely to cause you and your family to be killed if you were involved in an accident. So they uniquely positioned their product, get 58 miles per gallon. That's what companies do. It's just business. It's not conspiracy. That's what companies do, is they uniquely position their product. So when I say protein, you say meat, eggs, dairy. But you must realize that there has never been a case ever of dietary protein deficiency. It's a non-existent problem unless you're starving to death. It's impossible to do. Remember I told you Walter Kempner fed white rice to some of his patients, and they had to cut the protein content in half. That means cutting the protein content from 5% to about 3% by adding table sugar, because it's just too much protein for these compromised people to handle. So even though there's never been a case of protein deficiency, every time I say protein, you say meat, calcium, or meat, dairy, and eggs. Why do you do that? Because that's what unique positioning does. Is that if I say calcium, you say dairy, cheese, milk. Well, there's never been a case of dietary calcium deficiency ever reported in the world literature on any natural diet. It does not exist. If I say omega-3 fats, you say fish. Well, no fish has ever made an omega-3 fat. Animals cannot desaturate at the carbon-3 position. They just can't do it. Plants can do it. So if a fish has omega-3 fat, it's because it ate algae or seaweed. Now, that's the lying part. That's the lying part about the need for more nutrients. But that's kind of how everybody thinks. You need more of everything, more. And the vitamin industry has added that too. There's also another lying part to these companies, these food companies, and that's lying about the harm of their products. And they do that by advertising. They do it by paying for scientific research. They do it by owning the food journals, the scientific food journals. What they do is they do scientific studies that show that their products aren't harmful. For example, we're right now suing the USDA because they let the egg industry get away with taking the cholesterol limits out of the U.S. dietary guidelines for 2015. So we filed a lawsuit. You can see it in my January 2016 newsletter against the USDA And what they did is so I started writing about it in 1983. Maybe it was no, it was probably 1983. It's my original book called McDougall Plan, about how the egg industry started in 1970 to counteract the overwhelming science that proves that eggs cause heart disease. Hundreds and hundreds of experiments on people and animals showing that eggs raise cholesterol, damage the arteries, kill people, basically. And so in 1970, the first study was published by the egg industry to counteract that. And by the time I wrote this, which is probably 1983, but anyways, the book, The McDougall Plan, you can find it. By the time I wrote about this, there were 7 studies published by the egg industry which showed that eggs didn't cause harm. 6 of the studies were identified as being funded by the egg industry. Now what we find is the studies that were reviewed by the USDA to say that it's okay to not have a cholesterol limit for Americans. 92% of the studies that they were allowed to review were paid for by the egg industry. So, and the same thing with the meat industry and the fish industry and the dairy industry. Not only do they lie about the fact that there's no deficiencies from the uniquely positioned nutrient that they advertise to everybody, but they lie about the fact that these products kill people and make their lives sick and miserable. So anyway, I wish the potato industry would take a better tack at uniquely positioning potatoes, but there are so many positive things about potatoes. They're the anti-scurvy vegetable. They're ideal protein content. They have all the amino acids. They've been the worldwide pillar of nutrition, but they just don't have the money the meat, dairy, and egg industry have. So any of you who are worried about living on a diet of white potatoes alone, forget it. High carb Hannah, she gives you far more variety than I would if I was talking about a simple diet. She gives sweet potatoes and green and yellow vegetables, and oh my goodness, that's a plethora of nutrients. I'm not going to argue that there's over-nutrients, but because the body can handle that much extra nutrients. I'll just add one more thing and then you give me your next question. These people who are advertised high nutrient diets, be careful. It's nutrient-dense diets. We're talking about kale and cabbage and broccoli and blueberries and so on. One thing is that they're nutritionally unsatisfying if you leave the starch out. And so people are hungry on these nutrient-dense diets. The other thing is you are providing too many nutrients, way far more protein than the body can handle or can healthily handle. James Watson of Watson and Crick, the discovery of the helix DNA. James Watson wrote an article in, I believe it was 2003, that condemned the focus on high nutrient foods and even mentioned blueberries, based on the clear observations that taking nutrients in isolated forms like vitamins and minerals increase your risk of death and heart disease and cancer. So when James Watson says this, you better pay attention. You need to focus your diet on the food that people have always consumed, starch. And potato is a great starch.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Just a couple things based on what you said. Yeah, as far as cleanse goes in the Mary's Mini, I see that as a chance to reset. Like if you've cleansing your palate, almost like you're eating all this junk food and salt and sugar and all that, and it's just a narrow focused set of foods that you can eat that just kind of can reset your palate and get you, or if you've done this diet, you start to slip, and things are off the rails again. It's sort of a way to get your palate back to those simple foods again.
Well, you could also do a water fast.
Yeah, that's even.
That's the ultimate elimination diet. Of course, one that is definitely temporary. The reason we put that mini diet in, and remember, we called it a diet, not a food plan, a lifetime food plan. We specifically identified it as a diet. That's something, there are patients I take care of who've got prostate cancer and breast cancer, heart disease and kidney failure and so on, and they just don't know what to do. You know, here they walk out of McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken into my world, and I know they're dying, desperate, need to get started. And there's so many things to learn. I'm married. My wife has almost 4,000 recipes published. So there are lots of different things to eat. But these people say, look, you know, we got to get started now. And how basic and simple can we make it to get started? Well, how about mashed potatoes? How about some frozen peas and corn added? How about throwing a little bit of barbecue sauce over the top, or sriracha? You can eat anything with sriracha. You know, so it's a way to offer somebody a way to get started immediately, and it also provides confidence in people that if I recommend potatoes alone as being complete in terms of nutrition, then if they believe, and if you look at what I've just shown you in terms of human history and experimentation, if they believe, then they don't worry about becoming protein deficient, et cetera, et cetera. See, Walter Kempner did this for me when I was a medical student. It was in the late 70s, actually. I was an internal medicine resident. I was worried about feeding people a vegetarian, vegan diet, which is what I was into, until I met Walter Kempner, and I didn't meet him personally, but I met his work. And his work is, by the way, easily available. Just look under Walter Kempner, and you'll find published articles in our best medical journals showing the phenomenal success of this diet. In fact, Walter Kempner financially supported the bulk of Duke University's needs for 2 decades. And the Kempner program was at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina for 7 decades. Anyway, when I met Kempner's work, and I saw that, you know, he was not only causing people to stay alive, but to thrive on a diet of rice alone, or actually rice with foods, quote, foods, that have even less protein and nutrients than rice, that being fruit juice and table sugar. From that point on, and by the way, his work, you can look at his work, it's in my December 2013 newsletter. If you look at his work, and you look at what his colleagues did, which is, you know, typically what we're dealing with now, is somebody is a doubter, and of course it's good to be challenged. But it proved to be right. Some of his competitors, concerned colleagues, took 8 of his patients and put them in a metabolic ward, and found every aspect of their nutrition was adequate. And you can find that paper. It's published in a scientific journal. It's in my December 2013 newsletter. So any of you seeking the truth, it's easily available. If you want to hear otherwise, if you want to hear that it's good to eat pork chops and you know, fried chicken and whatever, you'll find that too. But it's not the truth. So,
like, what about some of the other nutrients? So just to clarify and maybe play a little devil's advocate, the concern would be not so much like some people have lived for a period of time on a potato or on potatoes, but they want to talk about like optimal health and longevity. So like if you're looking at Chronometer, which is a website where you can enter your food, there's things like omega-3, selenium, zinc, vitamin E. And if you type in some foods like potatoes and maybe a few other things, you might not reach the RDA for certain things.
Well, then you ought to discard what you're seeing, because it's contrary to what you have really seen in real life. These recommendations, RDA or whatever, they're made up by, you know, people who look at limited amounts of data and come to some conclusions that you know, lead people to buy into the dairy industry, meat industry, fish industries, what I call it, and be nice on the internet. But they're untrue. You know, get over it. If you relied upon what the dietary guidelines for the U.S. just published 2015, you'd be living on a diet of meat and fish and dairy, and you would stay fat and sick just like the rest of Americans. It's a mimic of the American diet. So how are Americans' health doing? Do you see any vitamin E deficiency or selenium deficiency? Any of your friends suffer from vitamin E deficiency? What we're suffering from is poisoning from the meat and dairy and fish industries and the egg industries. That's what we're suffering from. Wake up, gentlemen, ladies. 80% of people are overweight. The new statistics say 38% of Americans are obese. Half of Americans die of heart disease. They're constipated. They go to the drugstore every week and buy Prilosec and Nexium. Half of them are on blood pressure pills, diabetic pills. You're telling me about a dietary problem related to potatoes or somebody's chronometer or recommendations from the government? I can't. I do believe it because money talks. They got the money. We got the truth and the success. And our results are published in the scientific journals. I've taken care of patients like this for 38 years. I've consumed this kind of diet myself for 38 years. I'm nearly 70 years old. And I'll tell you, the only reason I'm alive today is because I discovered this simple truth back in the early 1970s. Oh, well.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're looking at a lot of the bigger picture of health, and this is definitely in the trenches as far as an optimization of people that may be eating a plant-based diet and worrying about some of these nutrients. So, like, one of the questions I got was, how much fat is required for like fat-soluble vitamins and
there's never been a case of fat-soluble vitamin deficiency ever reported on any natural diet, including one of the potatoes. So again, that's a way to detract you from the issues. There's no such thing as fat-soluble vitamin deficiency on any natural diet. Mm-hmm. So move on, folks.
Let's see. If people do something like a cleanse or a Mary's Mini, where they focus, and then they expand to maybe Starch solution, something like that, or whenever there's the fear that they're going to gain weight, or once they're off of that more narrowly focused approach. So what's the strategy or approach to when you switch back and going back to more of maybe a starch-based diet overall, like a more variety, more diet that's very,
Well, it depends. That depends on what you go back to. And by the way, Mary's Mini diet could be rice. It could be sweet potatoes. It could be barley. It could be many different things. That mini diet we put together is just a starch with some green and yellow vegetables, just like high carb Hannah. She happened to pick potatoes and sweet potatoes. It doesn't change unless you go back to eating high-fat foods. Unless you go back to adding, which may be if you are a fat vegan. And by the way, there are a lot of fat vegans out there. Be offended if you like. But those are people who recommend a vegan diet, but also recommend nuts and seeds and avocados. Take a look at them. Take a look at their body. Hey, excuse me, they're called fat vegans. If you go to a diet with high-calorie foods like nuts, seeds, avocados, coconuts, 90% fat, you're going to gain weight. If you stick with a diet that is, let me give you a little bit more liberal numbers, is 70 to 90% starch. As I say, before 1980, the Chinese got 90% of their calories from white rice. There used to be no fat Chinese. 35 years ago, less than 1% of the Chinese population had type 2 diabetes. Today, they brag that over 12% has type 2 diabetes, and half are pre-diabetic. What happened in 35 years? What happened in the third? Anyway, the Chinese are very, very rich people, and they didn't change their genes. So it depends on what you go back to. I mean, if you go back to pork rinds and potato chips to vary your diet, you're going to get fat and sick again. Please. I have an article that I wrote called The Fat Vegan. It's in my book, The Starch Solution, and it's also in the newsletters that you can find on our website at drmcdougall.com. And I wrote it and I worried that I was going to offend people because I titled it The Fat Vegan. I didn't offend anybody. I mean, the vegan, in my opinion, is the easiest person for me to convert. A vegan has already declared their strength and intelligence. They're out there to protect the environment and to protect the animals. These are strong people who are very dedicated. But what happens is they go out and they try and share their message about saving the earth and saving the cows and the chickens with their friends and relatives. And their friends and relatives look at them and they go, and look like you? You know, so you see, this is getting in their way. These very important people who are vegan, who are fat, and you know them. I mean, there are a lot of them out there. Actually, I've seen a few videos of them recently when you asked me to do this. You know, they got to get their personal appearance out of the way. They got to get they got to see the elephant in the room. I think that's a very appropriate analogy, because people won't listen to you if you're fat and sick looking. So you got to get your vegan diet right, so we can really fix the planet. We can really take care of the animal abuse issues, which are so important. But anyway, I hope you read that chapter and you get the same impression that basically no one's criticized me. I wrote that maybe 6 years ago, and no one has come back to me and said that I was what do they call it, fat bashing or
Shaming, yeah.
fat shaming. And they said, "Oh, thank you, Dr. McDougall, for helping me understand so that I can be a more effective communicator." You should take my message that way. Just like I'm going to do an obesity conference here in about a month for Obesity Medicine Society. And I'm going to show a video, which is on my website and also YouTube, called Low Carb versus Plant Food. And it shows the gurus. And these gurus will be at the conference, by the way. And it shows the gurus, and it shows how Lauren Cordain, you know, the paleo diet guy, and Sally Fallon, the Western Price gal, and Barry Sears, his own guy, and William Davis, the wheat belly guy. They're all fat people. And I show these fat people versus people in our camp, which are higher carb guys like Neil Bernard and S. Esselstyn, Dr. Esselstyn, and Pam Popper, and so on. And, you know, we look good. We look trim and healthy and strong. And I'm going to show this video at this conference with, I don't know, 500,000 obesity specialists. And I'll also point out Robert Lustig, the sugar guy, who's chubby, and Andrew Weil, who's been obese as long as I've known him. And these are speakers and folks that are trying to educate the population and the professionals about how to be thin. And I'm going to suggest that the obesity conferences no longer invite fat speakers. And they're going to go, fat shame, fat shame. And I go, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about 330 million Americans that your message is harming. Mothers and fathers and children. I'll fat shame as long as I can get away with it at the benefit of my patients and the public. So take it where you want. I can't tell it any other way. Anyway, it should be an exciting conference. Not only do I have an hour at this very big professional obesity medicine conference, it's a big deal. It's in San Francisco on April 7th. Not only do I have an hour, but I'm also put on a panel with at least one of the low-carb proponents that works for Atkins. And I look forward to it. I just, if I'm going to walk in there saying, likely you'll never invite me back, but thanks for the one chance.
Yeah, I like to be there.
You know, this is not a popularity contest.
Yeah, like before I did the switch to starch, I was eating a vegetarian diet, which is involving like you know, the various soy products, and I mean there was eggs and cheese in there too. But yeah, it's just about the diet and really changing what people eat at the end of the day.
It's the food. It's the food. I don't care what you think. I don't even care if you exercise. If you fix the food, you'll fix the problem. You're suffering from food poisoning. The most important thing that I have written, I believe, is Dr. McDougall's color picture book about food poisoning and how to cure it by eating beans and corn, rice, sweet potatoes. It's on my website at drmcdougall.com. It's all free. Basically everything on my website is free. It is a color picture book of 66 color pictures with very short captions that everybody has time to read. Once you read the color picture book, everything becomes clear. It'll take you like 10 minutes to read it. It's at my website. And actually, I was never going to write another book again. I've written 12 national best-selling books. And I got convinced after a year of pursuing me by Harper One to write another book. I wouldn't write it unless it was about the color picture book, at least included it. So as a center standalone piece in my new book, which comes out in the fall, called The Healthiest Diet on the Planet, which, by the way, I just saw the cover, and the cover is a stack of pancakes with a few blueberries and a little maple syrup on it. I mean, oh boy, would I love to slap them in the face. Anyway, that's going to be part of the book. The Healthiest Diet on the Planet will be my color picture book. Otherwise, I've never written another book again. And,
is there more on top of the color picture book? Like, is there additional information? Or is that
no, it's basically, I'll change a few slides, but if you go to my website, have you seen the color picture
I've
book?
seen it.
Yeah. It's in 22 languages, by the way, so you can read it in Japanese, Spanish, and so on. No, it'll be basically the color picture book that's on the website. Will be just stuck right in the middle of the new book, The Healthiest Diet on the Planet, and Mary will have 24 color recipes in there. I just want to say something. I got just a couple of minutes now, then I'm going to have to leave. I just want to say something. I had the fortune of falling in love and being married to my best friend for 45 years now. And Mary did one thing, and I just feel like at our age and stage, I need to offer this recognition for what she did. Prior to Mary's recipe development, which started in the 70s, there were low-fat recipes, and there were vegan recipes. But the vegan recipes were full of nuts and seeds and oils, and the low-fat recipes would be skinned chicken and skim milk. Mary was the first one to develop and publish low-fat vegan recipes, which, by the way, I see all over the place now in terms of cookbooks and websites that people have picked up on this kind of recipe development that Mary developed. And I just want her to have a little bit of credit in life. She doesn't care, but she originated the low-fat vegan recipe concept, which is dominant now in cookbooks and websites, and ought to be, because low-fat doesn't work, and vegan doesn't work because it's high-fat or contains animals, as effectively as I've said.
Yeah. Well, that's great. It's really spread over the years, and I mean, I've just been doing it for a few years, and it seems like things are exploding more and more every day.
They are, but not fast enough. That's the problem, and that's why I appreciate the opportunity to be with your group in this video, is because the truth is the truth, and people are discovering it, but the planet is dying. Our society is dying. It's corrupting. Our children don't stand a chance, neither do our grandchildren. The truth is there. People who try and detract from the truth, I don't know why, but we all have to work together. It's not a matter of saving another person from type 2 diabetes, which we do 100% of the time, if they follow, stopping heart disease, slowing cancer. It's not that for me anymore. More important issues have become animal rights, the abuse of animals. I was blind to that when I first started. And even more important than that is now that I have 7 grandchildren, because I want them to have a future. And to have that future, we must change the food source on this planet back to a starch-based diet. We could put Teslas in everybody's garage. We could have solar panels on everybody's roof. We could completely stop the fossil fuel industry. But we still couldn't stop all the global warming that's going on until we stop the livestock industry. They produce half the global warming gases, at least, and the destruction of the planet is horrendous. from the livestock. So he asked me what I care for, and here I'm 70 years old. I care for the environment and what we have to do. And so any of you who are out there recommending animal foods, not going to be my friend. Anyway,
Yeah,
I hope you
it's-
get on the team and do whatever you can to give us a future.
Yeah, it's a great, well said. That's all I try to do. I mean, I talk a lot about the food, but because that's the key, but it's also about the animals and the environment. So appreciate all the work you've done and spending time to help talk
So
to us.
let's not wait so long to get back together again.
Okay, sounds good, Dr. McDougall. And
Thank you.
we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.